Everybody, welcome to this week's episode of Live Without Training Wheels. I'm your host, Lynna Sutherland, owner and author at Homeschooling Without Training Wheels, mother of 8 great kiddos, ages teen to toddler. And tonight I am thrilled to be joined by Hal and Melanie Young of Raising Real Men. And we're specifically going to be talking about a topic that's touched on their book, No Longer Little, Parenting Teens with Grace and Hope. And we will tell you lots more about that in just a minute. First, I'm going to do a few housekeeping details. So as usual, we are here inside Crowdcast broadcasting, but we're live streaming to YouTube and to Facebook. So if you're watching from Facebook or YouTube, you're welcome to keep watching there. But if you want to join the conversation, ask questions, comment in the chat box where we can see it during the live video, you'll need to look for the link in the video description to hop into the Crowdcast event. And we would love to have you. People are already pouring in. I can see them coming in. Your best viewing experience is going to be on a laptop or a desktop just because, thumb typing is a little awkward. But if you are on a mobile, that'll work just fine too. You just want to turn your device into landscape mode and then push the little square button up in the top for widescreen view and then tap view chat and you'll be able to see everything just as you would if you were on a larger device. At the bottom of the screen, if you're with us in Crowdcast, there's a poll, and I see people are already answering that poll. It's just interesting to me to see the composition of our audience. So tonight, the question that I'm most curious about is, how old is your oldest child? And Hal and Melanie, you'll be interested to know that almost 60% of our audience says that their oldest child is 9 to 12. So we've got folks here who want to hear exactly what you're talking about tonight. Also, you'll notice right next to the button that says polls is a button that says ask a question. If at any time during our discussion you have a question that you want to ask, pop it in that box. And if you see other folks asking questions, go ahead and vote on any that look particularly relevant to you, because sometimes we could answer all the questions. Sometimes we have too many. We can't get through all of them. So I will start with the ones that have the most votes, because those are the ones that are the most relevant to people who are here. So if you see a question you like, upvote it, and we'll just start at the top. Also, if you're watching this on the replay, you can actually skip right to the answers to any particular questions that catch your attention. So you can look at the questions and click a button to skip right to that question. So if you come to future episodes and ask a question ahead of time and then don't have time to watch it live, you can skip right to the answer to your question when you catch the replay. So, okay, let's get to the good stuff. Hal and Melanie, I mentioned to my readers when I emailed them about this event that I met Melanie actually at the HEAV conference. It was, I think, maybe 3 years ago now. And and we were standing outside waiting for the shuttle from our hotel to the convention center, and we got to chatting just about, homeschooling, parenting things. And providentially, I brought up the issue of, I think my daughter was 10 at the time, and we had a great conversation about it. And then I followed you guys to the convention center, and I was the intro speaker for one of your talks, which I planned because I wanted to make sure that I could be at that talk. And I just heard so many great, encouraging things that I thought, okay, I want my audience to get in on this good stuff. So would you start by just telling us a little bit about yourself, your family? How did you get into this whole Raising Real Men business? Give us a little backstory there.
Well, let's see. We have 8 children as well, but the first 6 of them were boys. And, Hal and I were involved in homeschool leadership here in North Carolina, and people kept asking us to come speak at their support groups. And we'd say, well, what would you like for us to speak on? And they said, you've got all those boys. Tell us what to do with our boys. Well, when we started speaking about it, we realized the issue is really more parenting boys than it was homeschooling boys. And everywhere we spoke, people said, do you have a book? We said, no, we don't have a book. We have a family. Well, we did write the book, and we were kind of shocked that within a few months it launched us into national ministry. And we have been, we were just talking about it, this summer will be 10 years that we've been doing this, that we've been speaking and writing.
Okay, so how old is your oldest now?
29.
Okay.
29.
And our youngest is in that 9 to 12-year-old phase.
Right
so
in the
throes of it, all day today. Yes.
Yep.
And you were still very much busy with even little tiny ones when you started out on this whole journey of book writing and speaking. Awesome.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so we are here tonight to talk about tweens, that 9 to 12 age range, and I was in the throes of it today too. One of the things that's funny is the gal that I talked to, Melanie, about when we met. I feel like I said to my husband, like, I feel like with her, we've kind of done the valley, and we're kind of starting to see we're coming up the other side. And now we have our next one who's moving into it, but we're not panicking quite as much because it's like, okay, we've sort of seen this work its course, and they all still have their struggles, but it's a little less frightening the second time around. But I feel like definitely having y'all's insight helped us to kind of not freak out and stay the course and kind of take it as it comes. So I want you to share some of that wisdom with our audience. Can you just start out by telling us what is unique about those tween years, and especially what are kind of the biological things that are happening that at least I was completely unaware of before talking with Melanie, actually?
Well, I tell you what, it caught us off guard completely.
Gobsmacked us.
We had absolutely, because, we were like, I guess, everybody that's gone through school, and you think, okay, when the girl starts to get a figure, when the guy's voice cracks and he gets his first proud whisker, now we're dealing with, and you know what? Nobody told us, oh, no. That's 2 or 3 years down the road. You're going to be in the middle of this for a long time.
Yeah, nobody told us that the hormones cause the physical changes.
Right.
So the hormones come first, and they call it long before that you get physical changes, you get crazy emotional changes that are way harder to deal with than the physical stuff.
Yeah.
Some symptoms. They're on an emotional roller coaster, and they get angry for no reason, or they get weepy for no reason.
Mm-hmm.
And what's worse is they look around, because always before, when they felt that way, someone had upset them.
Mm-hmm.
So now they're looking around. Why do I feel this way? It's you.
Me.
You must have done it.
I just got here. What?
Yes, you're the problem.
What?
Yeah, and it's just, for a parent, you just think it's really easy to go, they climb on that emotional roller coaster, and they invite you to join them.
Mm-hmm.
Do not get a ticket for this ride.
Well, and you just think, I had this sweet, obedient, compliant child, and they were wonderful students, and life was brilliant, and we thought everything was just grand, and then suddenly all the wheels came off at once, and everything went wrong, and somehow I was to blame for it. What? And it's a very unsettling thing.
And now some kids are quieter about it. Our first was super passionate and emotional.
Well, he wasn't quiet.
Oh, not at all. He's never been quiet. But some of them are quieter about it. And in them you see sullenness and withdrawal. And I don't want to talk to anybody. I don't want to be with anybody. I don't want to do anything. And it's shocking to the parent. It's really easy to react in anger back at them. Sometimes they'll throw around accusations that you've done things. I remember one of ours looked at Hal and said, "You're a liar. You don't tell the truth. You're not a promise keeper."
What in the world?
What?
And, where did that come from?
And it was over an offense that he'd misunderstood something 7 years ago. What?
And suddenly today it's an emergency. Today it's a deal breaker.
Yeah. And the temptation is to go directly to discipline, because sometimes they're so rude and they're so disrespectful, and you just want it to stop. And so, son,
what?
You're not going to the fellowship, to the homeschool group this afternoon. You're just not going. You're not the way you acted.
I didn't want to go. I didn't have any friends there anyway. I don't like that place.
You're going to have to miss soccer practice this week then.
This is chasing the ball. That's stupid. I wish I didn't do it.
You can't go to the youth fellowship at church this weekend either.
I don't have any friends there either. It doesn't matter. I don't care.
You're grounded for 2 weeks.
I don't care. I'll catch up on my reading. Make it 3.
You're grounded for a month.
I don't care. You can make it a year for all I care. I'm just sick and tired of everything.
And before you know it, you've grounded them until they're 43, and you can't make
that stick.
That's
not
sustainable.
Yeah.
It's really frustrating. So,
that way it doesn't work. It's tempting.
Well, that was a thing that we had to learn, that the disciplinary techniques that you use, the discipling techniques that you use when there's 6 or 7 or 8 years old, they have to change when they hit this time. They, when they're into this early adolescent, this sort of pre-adolescent thing, they are changing. Their emotions are absolutely out of whack, and your parenting has got to be a lot more perceptive.
Yes.
And in some ways, a lot more patient, I think, to really make it effective.
You have to move from, with a younger child, you know, we discipline at the point of infraction. You know, they've done wrong. Immediate correction. Meet me in the laundry room. We got to deal with this. With a child this age, if you do that, it becomes World War III. They're irrational. And instead, now this is the really important part, folks. When your kids leave home, you will have nothing but your relationship with them.
Right.
And if you don't have a relationship with them, you will have nothing when they leave home. Most parent-child relationships are broken during the preteen years.
Wow.
And that's why everybody warns you about the teens, because when the preteen years, when that relationship is broken, the teen years get worse and worse. But if you can get through this time,
this 2 or 3 or 4 year period, if you can get through this with your relationship strong, intact even, then the teenage years can actually be a lot better. I mean, and they can get better and better. You know, our adult kids, by the time they leave high school and start off to college, they are friends. They are, you know,
they're our best friends.
They're our best friends. You know, they're confidants to us. They are people that we want to be in touch with, not people that we want to micromanage and direct and order around, but young people that we want to have a relationship that we just enjoy.
Yeah, and we have 5 adult kids now. And so we've seen this play out. And so the most important thing you can do during the stage is to maintain your relationship with them. That's easier said than done because they're super annoying.
Now, I remember an analogy that you used that I went home and I repeated this to my husband. It was an analogy from your previous career in being a lineman. Can you share that? Because I thought that was a very powerful analogy.
Yeah, I used to work for Carolina Power and Light back in a previous career. And one of the things they really drilled into us was when you are out working in a substation, you're dealing with an ice storm or whatever, you are in an error likely situation. I mean, it's dark, you're tired, it's cold or icy, you're under
they don't
pressure.
Call the engineers out unless there's a crisis.
and so they said, if you're in an error likely situation, you need to think twice before you do anything, because if you reach for the wrong handle on that panel in the switch station, you could either turn the lights off on the other half of town, or you could kill somebody that's working on the line. So they said, always be aware of your limitations when you're in an error likely situation. And that's where you are as a parent. If you've got a preteen, you are in an error likely situation as a parent. And so
that means you've got to be super careful. And so what does that look like? That looks like, instead of going immediately to discipline, that instead you invest in the relationship first. That means instead of saying, you're not going to talk to me that way, which, hey, I did it today. I had to repent. Instead, you say, whoa, honey, come here, sit down. What's going on? I love you. I want to understand what's happening here.
Okay, well, see, because that's what we found out is that, your children have an enemy. They have an enemy who wants their souls, who wants to disrupt their relationships. And he's seen this happen thousands upon thousands of times. He knows the drill. And so when they're all in an emotional whirl and their brains aren't working right, he's there on their shoulder saying, they don't really love you. Nobody understands you. They're just interfering with your life.
Nobody cares about me.
They don't care.
I remember saying those things.
And you had good parents. I had good parents. It's just normal. That's the temptation our kids have. And so when you listen first, before you lower the boom, if you listen to them, let them talk themselves out and tell them, hey, I love you and I want to understand you. That's specifically counteracting that narrative of Satan to say, hey, you know what? I do love you. I do want to understand you. Please help me.
And then when you listen to them and let them talk themselves down out of the tree, then you can discipline. But then
you will need to. By that time, you probably, there's no question. But
at that time, we've had them at that point say, you're right, Mom. I know you need to discipline me. What are we going to do? What? Because you invested in the relationship first. And it's hard. It's time consuming. but it's so worth it.
Yeah. Okay. So there's a comment over here from Sandra who said that she can't hear me. Are you, Hal and Melanie, can you hear me okay? Okay. Okay. Well, I'm going to keep going. I apologize if anybody can't hear, but I think we'll just keep going and maybe you guys can catch it on the replay if you're having some difficulties. So you mentioned earlier, you know, that these tween years look different. So some kids are louder about it. Some kids are more sullen. I have one, and Melanie, I think this was actually something you mentioned to me when we talked that wasn't the case at the time. My first one was kind of like a loud out there, like when she was upset, everybody knew it. My second, though, is okay. Good, Sandra. Thanks for letting me know. My second is it's been this like wild blossoming of irrational insecurities. Like, the communion plate is being passed, and she didn't realize it, and she was looking the other way. And when it was pointed out to her, and she passed it, and then she's in tears because like everybody hates
extreme social anxiety.
Right. Mm-hmm. Right. And so that was, and I think you actually mentioned something about insecurity, and I'm glad that you did, because I thought, oh yeah, that's how it's manifesting with this one. It's not like yelling at everybody and everybody's ruined her life. It's like, I'm an awful person and everyone must hate me kind of a manifestation. Have you noticed any difference between boys and girls, or is it more just difference between individual children?
Well, okay. With the boys, what we saw with the boys, kind of the big fingerprint on their behavior was anger, rage, outrage.
They're like the Hulk.
They would just blow up. With the girls, it tends to be more of the weepiness,
squalling.
But they both go. They swing both ways. I mean, I've seen the guys just absolutely break down and utter ruin over things, and I've seen the girls get so snippy with each other. Yeah, and it's just they're emotionally labile. And, they're very fluid in their emotional makeup at the moment. And they don't, the funny thing is they don't even realize what's happening.
No, they don't have
I remember one time we were sitting at the dinner table, and our kids are, they're respectful, they're good kids. Yeah. And we're sitting at the dinner table, and I forget what I was saying, but one of the kids just smarted off, which they don't typically do. He just said something that was so disrespectful, and me and Melanie both went like that, and he recoiled, kind of like
what just came out of my mouth.
And we realized he didn't even. I mean, that didn't even
clueless.
Hit. The filter was gone, and it just went blah out, and he wasn't controlling it. And that's part of what they're dealing with, is that when they hit this time biologically, one of the things that happens, besides all of the emotional stuff with the hormones, one of the things that happens is they go through a brain remodeling. Okay, there's actually physical changes going on in their and that's right. The physical changes going on with their brain, especially in the frontal lobe where the executive functions live. What are executive functions?
Focus and priority setting and problem solving.
And good judgment.
Is this a good idea? Bad idea? Is it short-term memory? They lose it. I mean,
it's gone. It's gone because
it literally unravels.
Well, there's physical changes going on in their brain, and so you may look at them and think, you never would have done this when you were 8 years old.
Yes.
No, they wouldn't. But right now, they don't have an 8-year-old's brain, and they don't have a 15-year-old's brain. They've got some transitional species, which is not very reliable.
Which means school can crash and burn. School can take forever. You can ask them to do something. Son, go get my car keys.
Okay, here we go.
45 minutes later. Son, where are my car keys?
Oh, car keys. That was it. Car keys. Where are they?
On the microwave where they've been since before you were born.
They're still there? Okay. I'll go look again.
Yeah. But it's easy for parents to try to discipline this because they think it's that they don't care or they're rebellious, but really they can't function the same way they were.
And if they're really rebellious, there's others. I mean, they're out shooting craps on the street corner and drinking rot gut with the boys in the hood. That's different. But it just
and stomping your foot and saying, "No, I won't get your keys."
That's
rebellion and should be dealt with as rebellion.
But so much of what we see is not
wandering around in an adult haze is normal.
Yeah, my husband told me that I was no longer allowed to say to our 13-year-old, "What were you thinking?" He said that's just kind of a pointless question.
No, they weren't.
There's not a good answer.
No question going on there.
Yeah.
Well, we had a one of our readers asked us a question, and she said, "Well, my son set a fire in the garage. He thought it was going to be okay. He was just like, what was he burned? He burned some paper and he burned some cardboard,
and
then he burned
filled the garage with smoke. Everybody comes running.
Yeah,
they're trying to put out the fire, and he won't admit he did it.
Yes.
And then once he finally admits it, he can't understand what the problem is.
Yeah, it's like, why did you think this was a good idea? What, and then, no, that part of the brain doesn't function real well.
And this is the time in life when we think, hey, let's give our children large, sharp lawn equipment and send them out to, get started on that corner of life.
One thing I want to mention before we run out of time is that the combination of the emotional changes and the intellectual changes means that most kids go through a time of extreme spiritual doubt.
Yeah.
Some of them will tell you, they'll say, how do we know there even is a God? Some of them will say it, others won't, and they're really the more dangerous.
Yeah, you really need to just assume that they're having some struggles in this area, because I mean, we found we had a couple of hours that we had some that were just like volcanoes. Anything that crossed their mind came out of their mouth. You knew exactly what was going on, and the others were quiet, and so we thought, okay, everything's peaceful. It must be good. And it wasn't until a couple of years later that we realized, no, this child has had a total spiritual meltdown inside and never said a word about it. Mm-hmm. So you have to kind of assume, what, they need to be developing an adult faith. It's not enough to say, oh, mama loves Jesus, daddy loves Jesus, I want to love Jesus too.
No, because that works at 6. It doesn't work at 12.
Because when they get to be teenagers, they need to grapple with the faith for themselves. They need to come to their own belief, such that when they leave the house, when they leave home and they go off to college or their first apartment or whatever, they have the heart that says, hey, I'm going to follow God. Mom and dad followed God, and that was good, but I trust God myself too.
And so even if your children aren't bringing it up, this is a great time to study apologetics with them, to read books, philosophical books like Mere Christianity by C.S. Lewis, Case for Christ by Lee Strobel. Just make sure that it gets addressed during this stage, because it's way easier to address it during this stage than when they're 19 off at college.
And I think, too, this is a time. Have you noticed when kids are about 5 or 6, it's like they suddenly wake up and says, ooh, there's an invisible spiritual world. Like God and Jesus and angels and all of that, those are real. And a lot of kids profess faith when they're 5 or 6 years old. And then they get to be 9 or 10 and they're saying, well, how do I know that you know? How can I know what the and so that's a time when they're able to process the idea that there are different opinions about this, but there's only one truth. Let's talk about the truth.
Yeah.
Okay?
So those are the kind of things we see. We see emotional changes, physical changes, of course, but those are pretty obvious when they come downstairs and their pants don't fit on Sunday morning.
That's the easy part. Oh gosh, that's the easy part.
It's always on Sunday morning too.
Yeah, it's always Sunday morning. And the academic struggles, very common for them to just crash and burn academically. Spiritual struggles, it's a difficult age. Social anxiety, like you talked about with your daughter, very common. A child who has loved doing an activity suddenly will have a panic attack at the thought of it. And so, it's a challenge, but it's worth working through with them, because when you can be their safe place during the struggle, and when you can be there holding their hands through it and helping them through it, then that foundation of trust will be the foundation for your teen years. And the teen years are going to be way better than you imagined. Our teens have been a blessing, just they've been a lot of fun. Oh, yeah. The tweens, I'll be honest, I will not be sorry to see it in the rearview mirror. and it's a precious time.
We love our tweens deeply.
And it's an exciting time. They're discovering new things. They're learning new things. They're thinking in a way they couldn't before. But it's difficult. It's difficult for all of us.
It's difficult for them.
Yeah.
It's hard for them too. So
yeah, they have this kind of weird, awkward combination of they're beginning to be more self-aware. Yes. Like, what do other people think of me, and what am I supposed to be doing, and where's my place here? But they have a lack of the ability to kind of process their own thoughts. I feel like with my 12-year-old who's headed towards 13, she probably still has a similar level of emotional struggle, but she's a little bit more able to go, okay, I flipped out because this or that, and it's not really mom. And I can, I found one time in her journal where she'd listed like, when I get angry, this is what I should think about, and I thought, well, praise God. I mean, it's hard. It's been hard. It's been really hard. But, if she's learning what's going on inside of her own head, that's a life skill I'm glad for her to have. So, all right. So we've got a few comments over here. Penny says that the time consuming part is what makes it hard to quit what we're doing. In other words, how time consuming it is what makes it challenging to switch over to more of a listening and being patient mode.
It took me years to come to peace with that and to realize that really that wasn't wasted time.
Yes.
I felt like it was wasted time, but instead it was the most important time we had with our kids. It was time to shape them more than anything else.
Yes.
Yeah.
And you you have to accept that on faith until you see it. Some days are just like, it's a total meltdown around here. Everybody's a meltdown. And that's when you really have to stop. And it's when you're stressed. I was stressed today. We had a bunch of deadlines today and everybody's losing it. And I'll be honest, I didn't handle it very well. And I know better. You're not always going to handle it well.
Right.
But then you pick up and you do better next time.
You want to warn the kids, we're going to be on the air tonight. You're giving us examples. You're going to have stories to tell. No, we had, tell you what, we had 3 of them go through this at the same time. We had a late bloomer. We had one who was right on schedule. We had one that was early. And so there was 3 of them that were, that was a low point.
That was a rocky.
Wow.
But we lived.
And now they are wonderful.
We allowed them to live.
Yes. Now they are wonderful, godly adult men.
They do get over it. And that's an important thing. I mean, the problem is you're running along there with that wonderful child of yours, and they get to be 8 years old, and you're thinking, oh, they're starting to do their own work, and they can work independently, and they can.
I am just such a good parent.
And homeschooling is awesome, and this is just incredible. And then they get to be like 10, and they go into regression, and you thought, I thought we were done with this. And that's where a lot of the frustration comes, because you think, I didn't have to supervise the 8-year-old child. Why does the 10-year-old take so much direction?
They've wandered onto a different planet.
That's because they only have half a brain, and they need you to help them out. And see, that's the thing. In just a couple of years, that brain will knit back together, and they'll be able to carry on a decent conversation without melting down. They'll start to get some kind of grown-up skills developing. And you have a wonderful thing on the other side. So it's not forever.
Yeah.
That's important to remember.
It's not.
Yeah. And if you're like me, you have that 8-year-old who's just so self-motivated and everything is going great. And you're like looking at these people whose kids are 3 to 5 years older, and you're like, yeah, they're probably just doing something wrong, because I have such a great relationship with my 8-year-old. And, obviously, godly parenting fixes all of the problems. If you would just do it right, you wouldn't, have these problems. And then a couple years later, the Lord says, I love you so much that I'm going to relieve you of your idolatry and your delusions about what was making things go so well.
Yeah. Yes.
Oh boy.
That's when you go back and you apologize to people.
Yeah.
I'm so sorry. I judged you unfairly. I did not understand.
Yeah, we probably ought not to judge people in a stage of parenting till we've lived through it.
Right.
Honestly, yeah.
Amen. Okay, well, in just a minute, I'm going to answer. We've already got a couple of questions that came up in the comments over here, and I've added them to the Ask a Question box. If you've got more, please add them. But I'm going to let Hal and Melanie tell you. I'm going to add a little green button at the bottom of the screen, because Hal and Melanie have come bearing gifts, and they have a special, it's called Coming of Age Celebration Guide. So tell us a little bit about that.
Oh, this is something we started doing this several years ago with our guys when they got to be.
It was more than several years. It was almost 20 years ago. But anyway.
That's several. many years ago. We started doing this with all of our kids. And when they get to this stage in life,
12 or 13,
we draw a line basically and say, okay, from this day forward, we're going to treat you as a young adult in training, not one of the little kids anymore. And we want you to step up to the plate and to take that seriously, okay? And to kind of mark that date and sort of announce it to everybody else, we have a coming of age ceremony.
And we invite people to speak into their lives, and it's a huge party. It's the biggest party we do, and short of a wedding. And it has had a huge impact on our kids, because it's made them realize the importance of the transition that they're coming to. And it's enabled the godly people around them to speak into their lives and to help them to understand what it means to become a man or a woman. Anyway, we have a guide that will tell you how to do this. It tells you why and how, and it even has forms and stuff to help you plan it. And you can get it by clicking that button down there and heading over to our site. And if you're not on Crowdcast, you can go to raisingrealmen.com/Lynna, LYNNA, no caps.
Okay, and I will add that link to the YouTube video description and the Facebook Live after, as soon as this is done. But if you're eager for it, what Melanie said, raisingrealmen.com/Lynna. All right, so let's jump into our questions. Let's see. Sandra says, this sounds like my ADHD daughter since birth. Any tips on this stage with an ADHD child?
We have a child that was so ADHD that when he was tested at college, at a regional teachers college, they had never tested anyone that was more ADHD than he was.
Yay. Wow. Excellent. We win. We win. Okay.
You get a gold star.
The big problem with kids struggling with impulsiveness is that they already struggle with impulsiveness, and now they have no filters, and their executive functions aren't working even like they were 2 years ago. And it's really, really hard. Be prepared to repeat yourself a lot and to be patient. This will grow you in Christ. You expect to have to tell them to do everything 10 times. You need to make your 10th time as patient as your first or second, because if you lose it and start screaming and yelling, you're going to have a meltdown. They will melt down.
Well, because they will not realize, just like...
Because they have no clue it's the 10th time.
Yeah.
Remember, so one of mine, we were visiting in somebody's house, y'all, on a speaking trip. And I asked my darling daughter, honey, would you please go get me some water?
She said, yes, ma'am. And off she goes.
And she comes back with no water. And I said, honey, could you please go get me some water? I need to take my medicine.
Oh, yes, ma'am. And off she goes.
And comes back with no water. 4 times. Finally, I lose it. And I say, would you please go get me some water right now?
And she says, you don't have to be harsh, Mama. I'm glad to help you.
She had no clue.
And that's one of those things. That's one of those management things where you have to like make eye contact and make sure they're looking at you and say, by name, say, Bob, would you please go get some water and bring it to me? Thank you.
And sometimes I have to say, now, what did I ask you to do?
Yes. Yep.
Yeah, because
they really can't help it. And yes, they're going to get better, and you're going to expect them to get better, and you're going to teach them to get better. But right now, they're challenged.
Right now, you've got to help them get through it too. I mean, they are not enjoying this either. And so you're really trying to manage this, help them to to learn to handle themselves through this time, because they do have to get along. You still got to do schoolwork.
And speaking of schoolwork, some things that can help with schoolwork is to get them one of those big balls to sit on that requires them to balance. Has helped our daughter that struggles with that so much. And y'all, it drives me batty. I hate the thing.
Yeah.
But it helps her. Get them up and running up and down the stairs in between classes, doing push-ups, sit-ups. We started something for 2 minutes. I'll say, okay, give me 2 minutes, everybody. And everybody jumps up. And we do cross crawls. That's like marching where you touch opposite knees, because that helps build those connections between right and left brain. And that seems to help them. So activity, alternating with trying to concentrate, and don't expect them to be able to focus.
Yeah, you know what it is? It's kind of like this. If your child sprained their ankle playing soccer or whatever, if your child sprained their ankle and they're going to be limping around for several weeks, yeah, it's an inconvenience, and you're going to have to be patient with them, but you're not angry with them for having a sprained ankle. You just have to say, okay, look, let's, make sure that you've got your crutches. Let's take a little bit extra time, give you some help during the going up and down the steps and all, because they're going to get better. And this is where they need a crutch for their brains. They need a crutch for their emotions. You have to say, okay, this is inconvenient, but you need help and you're going to get better.
And you're going to discipline disobedience and rebellion and disrespect.
Yes.
You just have to do it a little differently. You have to listen first and then do it. You're not letting anything go. I know a lot of you are probably like I was so buttoned down, so worried that we weren't going to do right by our kids if we let them get away with anything.
No, you'll have another opportunity if you miss it.
Yeah,
there's always another chance.
10 minutes. But this is an age that requires a lot of mercy and grace.
Yeah. Well, and Hal, I love your sprain the ankle analogy, because like as Melanie was saying earlier, like they're going to invite you to have a ticket to that roller coaster. I have to remind myself, like, this is a struggle they're having. This is not something they're doing to you, right? Yeah. They're not like struggling at you intentionally, spraying you, even though it feels that way to me sometimes, like I had this system and it's not working anymore. And how could you do this to me? But it's not, like just if they sprain their ankle at soccer, it wasn't something they said like, how can I make mom's life harder? I know, I'll sprain my ankle playing soccer.
Yeah.
And they're like a sailor in a rowboat in a stormy sea, and that boat's going up and down like this, and they need something that's stable, something that they can tie off to. And you know what? Sometimes that boat's going to go wham, wham, and hit that rock. But sometimes they need something stable, and we are the rock in their lives.
That's beautiful.
We hope to be a point of stability that says, okay, look, I know you're going up and down right now, but everything's going to be okay. Just let me kind of help you settle it down.
Yes.
And thankfully, both the kids and I are tied to Jesus.
Yes.
Because he's even more stable than I am.
He's a lot higher than I.
Absolutely.
Yes.
And lots of times I just have to immediately throw up a prayer and say, Father, help me to control myself.
Yes. Yes.
Help me to control my tongue. And like Penny says here, you've got to decide, is this really disobedience, or is this they couldn't pay attention or remember? Because there's a big difference between I'm not going to do it, Mom, and what was it you asked me to
forgot.
do?
I know that was all the way across the room. I forgot.
Sometimes you can see them forget as they walk out the door, and you think that's gone.
That just leaps right out of their head, didn't it?
Yeah, we have one who, when I say, so we're doing Bible time in the morning, and I say, okay, everybody, we're singing hymn 38 this week, open to hymn 38. I just know that's not going to do it. And I'm going to have to be like, you, by name, open to hymn 38, because it's not disobedience, or like, it's just, I don't know what, it's just the wiring or something.
Well, I often think about Calvin and Hobbes and how he would go off to another planet as Spaceman Spiff while the teacher was talking.
Yeah.
Because lots of times you just look at them and the shades are up, but nobody's home.
They're not really in the room.
Yeah.
They're somewhere, but they're not really there.
Yeah. They're up there with Spaceman Spiff on another planet. Yeah.
And it probably started with something you said. They probably actually were listening.
Yes.
And then that took them off on some journey off to, Yep.
Early senility.
Oh gosh, yes. Yeah, that's it exactly. Yeah. Just think, I thought this didn't happen until they were like 80 or 85 or something. And here they are at 9.
And you just have to laugh sometimes, because otherwise it will drive you crazy.
Yeah.
It's just such a critical age. That's what I really want to get across to people is it is super, super frustrating. But if you do not handle it well, you will pay later.
Yeah. Okay. So Sarah is asking, and you talked about this some before, but she wanted to know, when they're having that spiritual doubt, how do you work through that? I was just thinking the other day with one of mine, I think I kind of thought of instilling a Christian worldview in the kids, kind of like installing an operating system on the computer, but it is way more like putting a fingered glove on a toddler. It's just so much like back and forth. And I thought we got that one, but nope, it's in the wrong. We got to work on that again and talk about it again. And so what are some of the things that you guys have done to A, not freak out, and B, be helpful to your children who are struggling with those doubts?
Not freak out is important.
That should be like written on your mirror to look at first thing in the morning. Don't freak out.
With our oldest, I freaked out because I remember driving down the road one day and he just out of the blue says, "Mama, you know what? I think I'm an atheist." You know?
Yeah. Like, not a 9-year-old infidel. When did that happen?
You know, this is the child that, you know, at 6, he knew all the 10 Commandments and memorized the Baptist Catechism, and he would pretend he was John the Baptist, and now he tells me he's an atheist. What?
Yeah.
You know, and by the way, he's a godly man, a leader in his church and everything now. But first, you've got to make sure they understand that you are safe to come to with questions.
Right.
That you're not going to freak out, that you're not going to hate them or disown them or be angry with them, but instead you're going to say, you know, I'm glad you asked because I've wondered that myself sometimes. And then you're going to help them with the answers. And if you don't know the answers, it's okay. You can say, you know, there is an answer to that, but I need to look it up. Or why don't we ask the pastor? Your pastor went to seminary to answer these questions. He would be thrilled to have somebody ask these hard questions.
Right.
You know, books have been a big help to our kids. All of our kids have been impacted by Mere Christianity. Working through those philosophical questions and understanding that ours is a reasonable faith, that they don't have to pretend or, you know, strain credulity or, you know, ignore reality to believe that we have a reasonable faith and answers to all those questions.
You know, one of the advantages we have as homeschoolers is we really are living our lives out in front of our kids. They're around us all the time. And
so true.
When they see us, you know, how do we deal with our own disappointments? How do we deal with fears? I mean, you know, we have stress in our lives. Maybe we're not afraid of the creature under the bed. We're afraid of the creature in the bank book. You know, we're afraid of the creature in the 401k or something. But you know, when they see us exercising our faith to say, you know what, this is going to be tough, but God's going to take care of us. Or I really am not looking forward to this, but it's the right thing to do because I love the Lord and I want to do what he would have me to do. Yeah. When they see us living that out and we talk about it with them, I mean, that's what Jesus did. You know, he brought his disciples to him and they just lived with him. And when he went out to minister, he would teach the crowds and then he would turn to the disciples and say, now, do you understand that?
Yeah.
Or they would ask questions. What does that mean? And he would say, okay, this is what the parable means. And you know, he just taught them all day long, all through life, all through the different things as he lived his life in the sight of God and encouraged them to come alongside with him. And he would explain things as he went. What a great opportunity we have as homeschoolers to do that round the clock. Whether you're talking about dealing with paying the tax bills or you're talking about understanding God's will for our lives.
You just need to be intentional about it and be careful not to bash them with the word of God, but instead to come alongside them as, you know, I've been there too. Yeah. There've been times I struggled with faith. You know, I had questions. Let me share a book with you that helped me. You know, let's talk about it. And I guess it's easy for us to think of children as our children as projects that we're being graded on and not as people. And this is an age that's super, super important to realize this is a human being. This is a person with an eternal soul who is struggling.
And I think, you know, I think we get used to thinking of the kids as sort of like pets that talk, you know, because we send them places to do things with them and we bustle around and we kind of train them the same way as we train the dogs sometimes. But when they get to this time frame, you're starting to look at a young adult. I mean, maybe a very young adult, but you're looking at somebody who's emerging into their, you know, their mature state. And you have to start thinking, instead of, well, how do I make this child mind me? You have to start thinking, well, if I was working with a younger colleague, if I was supervising a young college graduate in the office, how would I interact with them? There's got to be a little bit of humility and a little bit of respect going back and forth. And you start to develop that in your relationships in the home. And that's also training them for how to relate to people when they leave home.
Yeah.
They learn the lessons of respect and honor and trust right there at your dinner table.
Yeah.
So
important.
Yeah. Penny says, I had a problem with treating them as a pack instead of as individuals. That's an interesting observation too.
It's easy because we're just busy. We're busy. It's like children come on, do this, do that. And we forget that this is someone whose feelings get hurt. Someone who, is struggling themselves. Like, it's really common during this age for them to share things out of their heart that are sometimes offensive and hurtful. Maybe they're angry with you about something. And this time of them having no filters is actually a blessing, because you get to find out what's really going on in there.
To clean some things out.
Yeah.
It's like dump out the junk drawer on the kitchen table and let's just sort through it all. Yeah.
Let's sort through it. Let's work through it. Let's explain it like that time the child called Hal a liar. It was over. We had left a church when they were 7. Or
years
5
before,
or something.
Years earlier.
And we had said we would go back and visit that church again so they could see their friends. We come back sometimes.
But shortly after we left, there'd been a church split, and the families we knew had all gone to different churches. And so there really wasn't a single place to go back to. And, the kids were all young, and we didn't really bother to explain church politics we didn't explain church politics to our 7-year-old, right? But later on, we found out, that was something that has really been bothering him.
And it was great to be able to deal with that and put it. He was like, "Oh, I didn't know."
Yeah.
And it was so great to be able to just clear that up.
Yeah.
So, it was no longer of, a resentment toward us. It wasn't a bump in the relationship we didn't even know about. And so try hard to see it as a blessing when they say things that you think, what?
We find too that particularly in this age, we really do need to discipline ourselves as the parents to make eye contact, to really connect, because they'll interrupt you. They're not aware of what's going on. And it's real easy to say, not now, I'm busy, go away, you're bothering me. And we really do need to say, okay, what is more important eternally than the relationship I have with this developing young soul versus I really did want to finish this article before I broke off.
Or I was busy with the taxes or whatever. But we've got to remember that in 10 years, they'll be out of our homes. And what will we care about then?
Right.
Because it's important to start caring about those things now.
Yep. So true. Okay. So as I'm listening to you talk and I'm thinking back, on my own experience, and I'm sure that there's somebody listening here tonight, maybe several somebodies who's going, oh no, I think I've really messed up. I think I've, hurt relationships. I think I've been strict, firm, and harsh when I should have been patient and understanding. So Hal and Melanie, what would you share with that mom who feels like, I've done damage. What do I do now?
Well, we serve the Lord who restores the years the locusts have eaten. And there is grace. There is abundant grace. And so first you go to the Lord and you say, I need help and I need grace and I need forgiveness if I've sinned against you and I need your help with this. And then you go to your child and you say, sometime when they're not melting down, you go to them and you say, I have misunderstood some things that were going on in your life right now. And I have been harsher than I meant to be. And I'm going to try to change that. And I'm a sinner. I'm probably going to goof it up. But I'm going to try really hard for us to understand each other better during this time. And you can share with them some of the things we've shared. This is what I've learned about what's going on in your body and your mind. And explain it, because you never apologizing to your kids and asking for forgiveness does not lower you in their estimation. They know when you're a sinner. Instead, it models for them how Christians deal with it when they find their sin.
And I think it's a comfort to a lot of our kids to say, when they understand what's going on, because they're on that roller coaster and they didn't ask to get on that ride. And when you can explain things to them to say, okay, this is what's going on. This is why you're having some struggles with school. This is why your emotions are all over the place. it's not because you have failed. It's not because we have failed. It's because of a transition that everybody goes through. And it's not forever. It's going to be a little weird for a while here, but it's going to get better. We're just going to help walk through with you.
Now, if you have a child who won't talk to you because the relationship has really been strained, then what you need to do is listen to them. And you may be thinking, but they're not talking. They are communicating with you in some way, and it may be very subtle. It may be just a throwaway remark as they walk by. It might be, just running something at you. When they do that, stop what you're doing and look up at them and respond in a friendly way. Even if they're saying something kind of cutting, you want to say, so tell me more about that, or what was that? I want to understand. I want to help. And because in responding like that, you build a relationship and you show them that you do care about them as a person. And I'll tell you, we had one of ours, the relationship had just gotten cold. He wasn't sharing anything with me, and
he's naturally pretty reserved.
He's very reserved, and I realized I don't know anything that's going on in his head. And we'd been reading some recent research about relationship, and I just started doing that. I tried to respond to every single tiny bit of for attention that he gave me, and they were really tiny at first. And now, this is a couple of years later. Now he comes to me all the time and wants to talk. And he finds something interesting online, and he comes to find me to share it with me. And it was so worth that. And yet it was not fruitful for a while. It took some investment, but you can rebuild that relationship. God is so good to allow us to rebuild relationships, but you got to start.
Well, and that's where taking your eyes off the screen, taking your eyes off the phone, interrupting yourself to say, my child was speaking and I want to understand what they have on their mind. Just go ahead, be interrupted, because that is where the bridges are being built. That's where those little threads are being laced between your hearts. And it's cumulative. The more you do it, the stronger that relationship can get.
And recognize you may not even understand what their love language is. If the relationship is strained. So try it all. Go charm around them.
Good.
Praise them. Find it is hard to be the kid at this age that is always in trouble. Find something to praise and praise them.
And there's some of them. I know we had one who was, oh gosh, did he have anger issues? And I remember there were times when the only thing I could do with him, I couldn't reason with him. I couldn't interact with him. The only thing I could do was just like wrap him up in a big hug and tell him, you know what? I know you're going through a lot. It's going to get better. All right. You're going to be fine. And that's all I could do. And he got better. He's fine. But
this is a stage where you're going to give a lot more than you receive. But that's okay. We're the grown-ups here,
Yeah. And I think we just didn't expect it. And that's what really caught us.
That's what really got me.
And it wasn't until about the third time we went through it and started to say, I think I see a pattern emerging. Then we realized, this seems to be something they all, if you have one child and you have a rough few years, you say, I'm glad that's over. But when you see it happening regularly, you start to think, there's a pattern here. There's a process they're going through. Maybe I can be prepared for the next one.
And that's why we wrote our book, No Longer Little, because we've talked to people all over the country who are struggling with this age and wondering, how do we get school done? How do I answer their questions? How do we get through the day without constant meltdowns?
Well, I think everybody struggles. And that's the thing. We talked to so many people, and we didn't realize it at first, but when we opened up, when we published our first book and we got our social media thing going, we just realized we had so many people with kids this age who seemed to, at that point, they seemed to come, somebody give me some advice. And we realized finally, that seems to be a sticking point for everybody.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah.
It's available at nolongerlittle.com. And it has all and tons more.
So much more. Yes.
Yeah.
Awesome. Such good stuff. Okay. Well, Hal and Melanie, thank you so much for taking some time out of your week. Penny says she loves that book.
Aww.
Thank you for taking some time out of your week to share with my audience about this and to just give us some good, solid, practical advice and gospel heart encouragement. I really do appreciate that.
Well, thank you for the opportunity, Lynn. It's been a blessing for us too.
Thank you. Yeah, it's a blessing for me too. It's like a little bit of a selfish thing. Like, what do I need to hear about? I'll have those people on and talk to me all about that thing.
Yeah, that's a great thing about having a podcast. You have a podcast of our own. Yes.
Yeah, Hal and Melanie have a lot of great resources. So definitely follow up with them on a whole variety that they offer.
Everywhere on social media at Raising Real Men. And raisingrealmen.com is our blog and store. And No Longer Little is where to go for the book because you can read all the reviews out there.
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely. And if you are on the page in my blog where this is embedded, the show notes underneath that will have links to all that fun stuff for you so you can explore further. And if you're not already following me here on Crowdcast, just hover over there at my name and click follow. And we've got several more shows already scheduled for this month and more coming up after that. So I look forward to seeing you in the future. And thank you, Hal and Melanie, for being with us again. Y'all take care.
Oh, thank you.
We'll see you in Richmond this year.
Yes.
Yes. Well, I will see you at HEAV, and anybody in my audience who's coming, I would love to see you guys there, and you can meet Hal and Melanie as well.